Sundar Pichai was a quiet boy who never liked to show off. He grew up in Chennai, India, in a small house with limited money. His father worked hard as an electrical engineer, and his mother was a stenographer before she became a homemaker. Sundar didn't have a computer at home, and he didn't grow up with luxuries. But what he had was a sharp mind, a deep curiosity, and a habit of listening more than talking. When Sundar got admission to the Indian Institute of Technology, one of the most respected colleges in India, it was a big moment for his family. Many students dreamed of entering IIT, but only the best got through. Sundar had studied hard, burning the midnight oil, solving problems late into the night, with the help of old textbooks and sometimes borrowed notes. Still, when he first stepped into the IIT campus, he felt small. The place was huge. The students looked confident. Some were loud, some wore stylish clothes, and many acted like they knew everything. Sundar stayed in the background. He wore simple clothes and walked with a gentle, humble manner. He didn't talk much in class. When others debated, raised their hands, and showed off their knowledge, Sundar just watched. He preferred to sit in the third or fourth row, take neat notes, and think silently. But his eyes always stayed sharp, quietly following every word, every formula, every method. In his first semester, Sundar got admitted into an advanced calculus class. The professor who taught it was famous around the campus, not just for being smart, but also for being strict and sharp-tongued. He had a habit of making jokes about students who couldn't answer his questions. Some feared him, others respected him. But almost everyone knew that when he asked a question, it was better to avoid eye contact. He liked to put students on the spot, especially the ones who looked unsure or too quiet. The professor noticed Sundar early on, not because he stood out in a good way, but because he didn't stand out at all. To the professor, Sundar seemed like one of those quiet, average students who would stay unnoticed the whole year. In fact, the professor didn't even remember his name at first. He just called him you, third row, or you, yes you with the glasses. But Sundar was not average. Every night he would go back to his hostel room and study the topics taught in class. But unlike many others, he didn't just memorize steps. He wanted to know why things worked. If he saw a formula, he tried to break it apart. If he solved a problem, he would ask himself, could this have been done differently? Could it be easier? Could it be more elegant? He found patterns in numbers, shortcuts in long equations, and beauty in logical steps. For Sundar, math was not just about getting the answer. It was like solving a puzzle that had a deeper meaning behind it. And calculus, it became his favorite. A few weeks into the semester, something happened that Sundar never forgot. It was a normal Tuesday morning. The weather was warm, and the students were half asleep as they walked into the large lecture hall. The calculus professor entered, looking serious, holding a chalk in his hand as always. He stood at the board, and without any introduction, he turned around and pointed his chalk at the third row. You. Yes, you. Stand up. Sundar blinked. He looked behind him to check if someone else was being called. But no. It was him. What's your name? The professor asked. Sundar. He replied softly. The professor nodded, then turned back to the board and quickly wrote a long equation. It was a tough integral problem, something most students hadn't even seen yet. The room went silent. Everyone turned their heads to Sundar. Come here and solve this, the professor said. Sundar hesitated, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he didn't expect to be called. He stood up, walked slowly toward the board, and took the chalk from the professor's hand. His fingers were calm. His mind was already moving. The professor stepped back, arms crossed, waiting. Maybe he thought Sundar would panic, or maybe he wanted to prove a point, that not everyone can handle pressure. Some students whispered. Few giggled quietly. No one expected the quiet boy to even try. But Sundar looked at the equation once, twice, and began to write. First, he didn't touch the main part of the problem. He rewrote it in a different way, changing the structure. Then he took a different angle, one that skipped several complex steps, and used a substitution that only someone with deep understanding would think of. His steps were clear, his logic was tight. There were no mistakes. Within 5 minutes, Sundar stepped back and placed the chalk down. The board now held a complete, correct, and incredibly simple solution. The professor stared at it. At first, he said nothing. His eyes moved across the steps. He checked the result. He retraced the logic. Then he turned to the class. "Anyone else see this method before?" he asked. The room was silent. "This," he said slowly, "is not a method I taught, but it works. In fact, it's better than the one I had in mind." Sundar stood there, unsure what to do. The professor turned to him and gave a small, quiet nod. "You can sit," he said. As Sundar walked back to his seat, something had changed. The whispers had stopped. The giggles had turned into wide eyes. No one looked at him the same way, and the professor? For the first time, he remembered his name. That one moment didn't make Sundar famous, not yet. But it was the beginning. The professor, who once didn't think much of him, now watched him more carefully. He called on Sundar again, sometimes to test him, sometimes just to see what he would do. And every time Sundar delivered. He didn't become loud or proud. He remained the same quiet, focused student. But people started noticing. In the hostel, classmates began to ask him for help with homework. In class, even confident students turned to him for clarity. But Sundar never made fun of anyone. He explained things patiently with the same calm voice, always smiling a little, never showing off. For Sundar, solving that problem on the board wasn't about impressing the professor. It was just another puzzle, another chance to think differently. But for everyone else, it was the moment they realized this quiet boy from Chennai was no ordinary student. He was something special, and this was just the start. The calculus professor was well known on the campus for being very strict and having a sharp tongue. He enjoyed testing his students, especially the confident ones, by asking difficult questions in front of the whole class. Sometimes, when students didn't know the answers, he would make jokes or sarcastic comments, making them feel embarrassed. This made many students nervous. They tried very hard to prepare for his classes because nobody wanted to be caught unprepared in front of him. The professor believed that only the strongest students deserved to succeed, and he'd like to break down those who acted too proud or careless. One day, the professor decided to put Sundar in a difficult spot. Even though Sundar had surprised everyone by solving a tough problem the first time, the professor still didn't fully trust him. In his mind, Sundar was quiet and calm, but maybe he just got lucky the first time. The professor wanted to see if Sundar could handle real pressure. So, during a big class with many students, the professor suddenly stopped teaching and pointed at Sundar. "Come solve this problem," the professor said loudly. The problem was very complicated. It involved an integral, something that required many steps and deep understanding of calculus. Many of the top students were not even sure how to begin. The professor smiled, expecting Sundar to struggle, or maybe freeze, which would make the class laugh quietly or gasp. Sundar felt a sudden rush of nerves, but he stayed calm on the outside. Inside his mind, the problem started to unfold. Instead of rushing, Sundar took a moment to think quietly. He remembered the principles and patterns he had studied again and again. He thought about the problem not as a difficult challenge, but like a puzzle he had seen before, only this time with a new twist. He stood up and slowly walked to the board. The classroom was quiet. All eyes were on him. The professor's smile was a little wider now, ready to see a failure. Sundar took a deep breath and started writing. But instead of following the traditional, long method, he used a different approach. This approach was clever and simple. He used a shortcut, a trick he had discovered by looking deeply into the problem's structure. Each step was neat and logical. The students started whispering to each other. Could Sundar really do this again? The professor looked surprised. This wasn't just luck. Sundar's mind was fast, sharp, and creative. He had not only solved the problem, but done so in a way that saved time and made the solution easier to understand. When Sundar finished, the professor slowly walked to the board to check the answer. His face was serious. He reviewed each step, carefully. Then, without saying a word, he nodded slightly and turned back to the class. "You see this?" he said. "This solution is not the one I expected. It's better. This student has found a new way to look at the problem." The class erupted in whispers. Students who once ignored Sundar now looked at him with new respect. Some even clapped quietly. After that day, the professor began to call on Sundar more often. Sometimes the questions were easy, sometimes very hard. Each time Sundar answered, calmly and correctly. The professor's attitude started to change. He no longer saw Sundar as a quiet, average student. He began to think of him as a serious challenger, someone who could push the limits of what the class could learn. At first, Sundar didn't notice this change. He just kept working hard and thinking deeply about problems. But the professor was watching closely. He even started asking Sundar for advice during class. The professor was surprised by how quickly Sundar could understand new concepts and explain them clearly. This relationship between the professor and Sundar became a kind of challenge. The professor would pose tricky problems hoping to stump Sundar, but each time Sundar found a way to solve them. Sometimes the professor would smile quietly, almost proud. It was clear that he had met a student unlike any other. Meanwhile, Sundar remained humble. He didn't show off or boast. He stayed quiet in the classroom, but outside he helped other students with their work. Many classmates came to him for help because he could explain difficult ideas in simple ways. Sundar was patient, kind, and always willing to share his knowledge. Word about Sundar's talent spread quietly through the campus. Other professors began to notice him too. People who once overlooked him started to respect him. But Sundar's focus never shifted. He was not trying to impress anyone. For him, learning was a personal journey, a challenge to understand the world better. This part of Sundar's story shows that sometimes the greatest talents are hidden behind quiet faces. It also teaches that being humble and calm can be powerful. Instead of trying to show off, Sundar let his work speak for itself. And slowly, the world around him began to see his brilliance. Even the professor, who once wanted to embarrass Sundar, ended up learning a lesson. He realized that judging a student by their appearance or silence can be a mistake. Sometimes the quiet ones are the smartest, the most creative, and the most determined. This moment in the classroom wasn't just about a math problem. It was about respect, understanding, and discovering hidden potential. For Sundar, it was a test not only of his math skills but of his character. He passed with flying colors, showing that true genius often shines quietly before it lights up the world. And this was only the beginning of Sundar's incredible journey. The classroom had changed after that day when Sundar solved the tough integral problem in front of everyone. The quiet student who once seemed invisible was now at the center of attention. But Sundar didn't change. He remained the same calm and humble person, never boasting or acting proud. However, his new approach to solving problems made a big difference, not just to his own learning but also to everyone around him. After Sundar solved that difficult problem, the professor realized that Sundar's way of thinking was special. It wasn't just about knowing formulas or rules. Sundar understood the ideas deeply. He saw patterns that others missed, and he could find simple solutions to complicated questions. This made the professor curious. He started to pay close attention to Sundar during lectures, sometimes asking him to explain difficult concepts to the class. At first, some students were surprised. How could this quiet guy explain things so clearly and simply? But Sundar didn't mind. He spoke slowly and patiently, making sure everyone understood. Sometimes the professor gave Sundar problems that were even harder than usual, trying to challenge him. He hoped maybe Sundar would fail or get stuck. But every time, Sundar surprised him again. He would pause, think carefully, and then give an answer that was both correct and elegant. Sometimes Sundar even found new ways to solve problems, ways the professor hadn't thought of before. This made the professor feel a mixture of pride and amazement. He had never seen a student like Sundar. The other students began to notice, too. They stopped whispering or doubting him. Some of them started asking Sundar for help with their homework and projects. Sundar was happy to help. He never made anyone feel bad for struggling. Instead, he explained things step by step using simple examples and stories. His way of teaching made learning easier and fun for many students. Slowly, he became a leader in the classroom, but in a quiet and kind way. One day, the professor invited Sundar to work with him on a small research project. This was a big honor. Most students never got this chance, especially not during their undergraduate studies. Sundar was excited, but also nervous. He wanted to do his best. Working closely with the professor, he learned more about advanced math and how research was done. He asked many questions and shared his ideas freely. The professor was impressed by Sundar's curiosity and creativity. This experience helped Sundar grow. He realized that math was not just about solving problems on paper, but about discovering new knowledge and pushing the boundaries of what people understood. He loved this feeling of exploring unknown territory, and it motivated him to study even harder. Meanwhile, Sundar's classmates continued to respect him more and more. They saw that his success was not just because he was smart, but because he worked hard, stayed patient, and helped others. Sundar never acted like he was better than anyone else. Instead, he remained friendly and humble, earning the trust and admiration of many. The professor's opinion of Sundar also changed a lot. At first, he had tried to embarrass Sundar, thinking he was just a quiet and average student. But now, he saw Sundar as a true thinker and a source of new ideas. The professor even began to recommend Sundar for scholarships and internships. He encouraged other teachers to notice Sundar's talent and support him. Sundar's story began to spread beyond the classroom. Other students in different departments talked about the boy who could solve the toughest math problems with ease and explain things so simply. Some students from other colleges came to attend his study sessions. Sundar's influence was growing. Even though he was becoming well known, Sundar stayed focused on his goals. He wanted to learn as much as possible and use his skills to make a difference. He dreamed of going abroad to study at a top university and hoped one day to work in technology, where he could help create useful products for people. Sundar's journey showed something very important, that talent combined with humility and kindness can open many doors. His quiet confidence and willingness to help others made him stand out more than loud words or showing off ever could. It was a lesson, not only for his classmates and professor, but for everyone who watched him grow. This part of Sundar's life also taught the professor a lesson. He realized that teaching was not just about testing students and finding mistakes, but about encouraging their creativity and supporting their growth. The professor began to change his style, becoming more patient and open-minded. He learned that sometimes the best students come from unexpected places and might surprise you when you least expect it. As Sundar continued his studies, he prepared himself for bigger challenges ahead. The respect he earned and the knowledge he gained during this time gave him confidence to dream bigger. The lessons he learned about patience, humility, and hard work stayed with him. This chapter in Sundar's life was not just about winning over a tough professor or solving math problems. It was about growing as a person, learning how to lead quietly, and inspiring others through actions rather than words. Sundar's calm determination and creative thinking set him on a path toward a bright future, one that would eventually take him far beyond the walls of his college classroom. And so, from being the quiet boy nobody noticed, Sundar Pichai was becoming a respected thinker and leader, someone who could change the way people saw problems and find new ways to solve them. This was the beginning of a journey that would inspire many and show the world that true genius often comes wrapped in quiet strength and gentle kindness. Sundar's life began to change in many ways, but one thing stayed the same: his kindness and willingness to help others. Even though he was now known as a smart and creative thinker in his college, he never forgot what it felt like to struggle with difficult subjects. He understood how confusing math and science could be for many students, and instead of keeping his knowledge to himself, he shared it. Many students started coming to Sundar for help. Some were shy and afraid to ask their professors. Others simply found the topics too hard. Sundar didn't mind. With patience and a gentle smile, he would explain things again and again until they understood. He had a special way of breaking down complex calculus concepts into simple, easy steps. Instead of just repeating formulas, he used stories and examples from everyday life, which made learning feel less like a chore and more like an interesting puzzle. This made Sundar popular among his classmates. People respected him not only because of his talent, but also because of his heart. He never made anyone feel small or foolish for asking questions. Instead, he encouraged everyone to keep trying and to believe in themselves. His quiet confidence inspired many students to work harder and to enjoy the process of learning. At the same time, Sundar's relationship with his calculus professor was changing. The professor, who once tried to embarrass Sundar, now saw him in a new light. He respected Sundar's intelligence and was impressed by how Sundar could explain difficult ideas clearly to other students. The professor began to invite Sundar to help during lectures, sometimes asking him to solve problems on the board or to explain concepts to the class. One day, the professor surprised Sundar with an offer. He asked Sundar to join him in a research project that involved advanced math topics. This was a big deal because undergraduate students rarely got such opportunities. Sundar was excited, but also a little nervous. He wanted to do his best and learn as much as possible. Working on the research project was a new experience for Sundar. It was different from regular classes where there were clear, right or wrong answers. Research required exploring unknown ideas, trying new approaches and sometimes failing before finding the right solution. Sundar loved this challenge. He spent many late nights thinking, writing, and solving problems. His creativity shone as he suggested new ways to approach the research questions. The professor appreciated Sundar's dedication and fresh ideas. They spent hours discussing math problems, sometimes disagreeing but always learning from each other. This partnership helped Sundar grow not only as a student, but also as a thinker. He learned how to ask better questions, to be patient with the process, and to trust his intuition. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, Sundar continued to help his fellow students. His reputation as a patient and talented tutor spread. Many students began to study together, forming groups led by Sundar. These study groups became a place where students could share ideas, solve problems together, and support each other. Sundar believed that learning was not a competition but a journey to be shared. Despite his growing popularity, Sundar remained humble. He never sought attention or praise. For him, success was about understanding and helping others understand. He believed that knowledge was a gift meant to be shared. The professor also began to change because of Sundar. He realized that being a great teacher wasn't just about testing students or pointing out mistakes. It was about encouraging creativity, patience, and kindness. The professor started to listen more and to appreciate different ways of thinking. Sundar's quiet strength had taught him an important lesson. Sundar's journey during this time showed that intelligence is not just about solving problems quickly, but about helping others and growing together. It was about respect. Respect for knowledge, for hard work, and for the people who learn alongside you. As the semester went on, Sundar prepared for bigger challenges ahead. He worked hard to improve his skills, knowing that this was just the beginning of a long journey. He dreamed of studying abroad, meeting new people, and working on projects that could change the world. Through all of this, Sundar stayed true to himself. He never forgot his roots or the values his family taught him: hard work, humility, and kindness. These values helped him stay grounded, even as his reputation grew. Sundar's story during this time was more than just about math or academics. It was about becoming a leader in a quiet way, inspiring others by example. It was about understanding that true respect is earned through patience, generosity, and a willingness to learn and teach. And so, Sundar Pichai's journey continued, marked by steady growth, deep thinking, and a heart that cared not just for his own success but for the success of others. This was the foundation that would carry him far, long after his days in that college classroom. Sundar's journey was about to reach a new and exciting chapter. After proving his intelligence and kindness at his college, he began thinking more about his future. and how he could use his talents to make a bigger impact on the world. Sundar was no longer just a quiet, talented student. He was becoming a young man with big dreams and the determination to achieve them. One important thing that helped Sundar was his family. They had always supported his education and believed in him. His parents worked hard to give him opportunities to study and learn, even when money was tight. Sundar remembered the sacrifices they made and felt a strong sense of responsibility to succeed, not just for himself, but for them too. Their belief in him gave him strength during difficult times. Sundar's success in math and technology had opened doors to many opportunities. He began applying to top universities around the world, hoping to continue his studies in computer science and engineering. Getting into these universities was not easy. There were thousands of talented students competing for just a few spots. But Sundar didn't give up. He worked even harder, preparing for entrance exams, writing essays, and gathering letters of recommendation from his professors. When Sundar received acceptance letters from some of the world's most prestigious universities, it was a proud moment. It was proof that his hard work and dedication had paid off. But Sundar knew this was only the beginning. Moving to a new country and studying at a top university would be a big challenge. He had to adapt to a new culture, language, and style of education. At the university, Sundar found himself surrounded by students from all over the world. The competition was intense, and the classes were challenging. But Sundar remained calm and focused. He continued to use the same qualities that had helped him before: patience, hard work, and a willingness to ask questions and learn from others. During his studies, Sundar became interested in how technology could solve real-world problems. He started working on projects that involved designing software and improving computer systems. His ability to think creatively and solve problems quickly impressed his professors and classmates. Sundar's projects were not just about technology. They were about helping people and making life easier. Outside the classroom, Sundar stayed humble and kind. He joined clubs and groups where he could meet new people and share ideas. Even though he was very busy, he always found time to help others. Many students came to him for advice and support, just like he had helped so many back in his college. Sundar's journey wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt and struggle. Sometimes he felt overwhelmed by the pressure to succeed. But whenever he faced difficulties, he remembered his family's support and the lessons he learned from his professors and friends. He understood that challenges were part of the journey, and that perseverance was the key to overcoming them. One day, Sundar got an incredible opportunity. A famous technology company was looking for talented young people to join their team. Sundar applied and was invited for an interview. This was a huge step towards his dream of working in the tech industry. The interview was tough, with many challenging questions and tests. But Sundar stayed calm and confident. He used his problem-solving skills and clear thinking to answer every question well. Sundar got the job. It was the start of his professional career, and he was excited to learn and grow in a real-world environment. Working at the company gave him a chance to see how technology was created and used on a large scale. He met many smart and experienced people who became his mentors. Sundar learned about teamwork, leadership, and the importance of innovation. Even as Sundar's career grew, he never forgot his roots. He stayed connected with his family and friends, sharing his experiences and inspiring others to pursue their dreams. He believed that success was not just about personal achievements, but about making a positive impact on society. Sundar's story shows that true success comes from a mix of talent, hard work, and kindness. It is about staying humble, helping others, and never giving up on your dreams. From a quiet student facing tough challenges in a college classroom to a young professional ready to change the world, Sundar's journey is a powerful example of how determination and heart can lead to greatness. His journey was far from over, but one thing was clear: Sundar Pichai was on a path that would inspire many and change lives for the better.